January 15th, 2023. Just after 2 in the morning, 19-year-old LSU cheerleader Maddison Brooks is so drunk she can't stand up on her own. Security cameras outside a Baton Rouge bar capture her falling over again and again as a group of 4 young men close in. Minutes later, Maddison climbs into their car. She doesn't know them. They don't take her home.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I said to you that. Get out. I will Uber on my own.
They take her somewhere dark. And what happens next will lead to assault charges, leaked videos, DNA bombshells, a shuttered bar, and a legal battle that 3 years later still isn't over. Because less than an hour after getting into that car, Maddison Brooks is lying in the middle of a Louisiana highway in the rain. Her body was broken, hit by a rideshare driver who never saw her in time. Her blood alcohol is so high, doctors say she should barely be conscious. There are injuries consistent with an assault, and yet, when the lab results come back, investigators make a shocking discovery. DNA from none of the accused men is found inside her. This is the story of Maddison Brooks. Before she was a headline, Maddison Kennedy Brooks was just Maddie, a daughter, a sister, a 19-year-old sophomore at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge. She grew up in Covington, Louisiana. In high school, she was on the honor roll, cheered, and was the kind of girl who lit up every room she walked into. Friends described her as having a pure heart and an infectious laugh. Someone who loved skydiving, spontaneous trips, and above all, being with the people she loved. She'd just been accepted into LSU's prestigious Manship School of Mass Communication. For a 19-year-old who dreamed in color, the rest of her life felt like it was just about to begin. At LSU, Maddison joined Alpha Phi. She was the one always up for anything. Football games, late-night food runs, and especially nights out in Tigerland, the strip of student bars just off campus. One of those bars was Reggie's. It had been there for decades. Undergrads packed it on game weekends. The music was always too loud, and the drinks were always too strong. Reggie's offered no-cover perks to sorority women. To Maddison, it was a familiar place, a place she felt at home. But Reggie's had a history. Underage drinking violations, fights, a reputation that sounded less like fun and more like a warning. On Saturday night, January 14th, 2023, Maddison and her friends chose Reggie's again. It was supposed to be just another college night out. It would be her last. Maddison arrives around 10 p.m. The bar is packed, bodies shoulder to shoulder, music shaking the floor. She's 19. The legal drinking age is 21. Signs say no one underage can be served. But that night, like so many others, those rules might as well be decorations. By around 1:34 in the morning, Maddison's blood alcohol level was .282, more than 3.5 times the legal driving limit. At that level, medical guides say most people are in danger of alcohol poisoning and losing consciousness. The cameras inside Reggie's show exactly that. Maddison trying to stand from a bench near the entrance and just collapsing. She falls hard, tries to get up, falls again. She's weaving, unsteady. At one point, a young man walks over and lifts her baseball cap off her head. She grabs his hand to pull herself upright. That young man was Desmond Carter. Near him are 3 others: Kason Carver, Kyvon Washington, and Everett Lee. All of them either underage or barely legal. All of them drinking in that bar. Just before 1:50 a.m., the 4 men leave. Outside, another camera catches them in the parking lot. Seconds later, Maddison appears in the frame, moving quickly, almost running to catch up. She had never met them before that night. But now, with her friends nowhere in sight and her speech slurred, she follows 4 strangers to their car. At 1:54 a.m., they all get in. Carver drives. Maddison gets in the back between Washington and Carter. And with that, they pull away from Reggie's, taking Maddison into the night. What happens next comes mostly from the men in that car, and from a short, disturbing video they recorded on their phones. Carver later tells deputies that Maddison looked lonely and drunk. He says he offered her a ride and she agreed. But agreeing to get into a car is not the same as agreeing to what he says happens next. Carver says he drives a short distance and pulls over. He and Lee stay up front. In the back, Maddison is wedged between Carter and Washington. Someone pulls out a phone and starts recording. The video shows Maddison slurring while the men laugh. In one clip, she sounds frustrated, telling Carter to get out so she can Uber on her own.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I offended you that bad. Get out. I will Uber on my own.
The men chuckle. To them, it's a joke. According to Carver, both Carter and Washington have sex with Maddison in the back seat. He insists it was consensual, but then admits something damning, that she was, in his words, too impaired to give proper consent. That line becomes the heart of the prosecution's case. But in that car, no one is calling 911, calling her friends, or taking her to a hospital. They treat her like a story to tell later. Something to film. Something to laugh about. The men will say she could talk, could make decisions, that she wanted to be there. The question hanging over this entire case is simple and impossible. What does consent mean at a blood alcohol level that high? Because whether Maddison understood it or not, every mile that car drove was pushing her further from safety. Eventually, Carver drives toward a quiet subdivision called Pelican Lakes off Burbank Drive, a few miles from campus, pitch black at nearly 3 in the morning. The men ask Maddison where she lives. She can't tell them. So they make a decision. Not the campus police station, not a hospital. They drop her off outside the neighborhood and drive away. It is the middle of the night. It is raining. Maddison is alone, wasted, and disoriented on a dark stretch of road. From here, we only know fragments. At some point, she ends up in the middle of Burbank Drive. Maybe she's trying to cross, maybe just wandering, maybe, like said in that car, she's trying to find an Uber. Just before 3 a.m., a rideshare driver, sober, on duty, comes down Burbank. It's dark. It's raining. He does not see Maddison until it's too late. His car hits her. He immediately pulls over, calls 911, stays at the scene. Toxicology clears him completely. He is never charged, but Maddison's injuries are catastrophic, and the autopsy notes something else. Physical signs consistent with a recent assault. As Maddison lies on the wet asphalt, 2 LSU seniors driving home spot something wrong. Instead of going around it, they pull over. They find a young woman in the road, unresponsive, gravely injured. They call 911. A dispatcher talks them through CPR. For long minutes, those 2 strangers press on Maddison's chest in the dark, counting compressions, trying desperately to keep her alive. Maddison's family will later call them guardian angels, the only people that entire night who saw her in danger and immediately tried to save her. But her injuries are too severe. Not long after paramedics arrive, Maddison Brooks is pronounced dead.
Maddie Brooks leaving Reggie's at about 1:50 a.m. on January 15th. A little more than an hour later, the 19-year-old LSU sophomore was hit by a car on Burbank Drive.
At first, Maddison's death is treated as a tragic pedestrian accident, but her family begins to receive videos through social media, showing Maddison at Reggie's, showing strangers, showing just how drunk she was when she left with 4 men they didn't recognize. They push investigators to look closer. A state trooper who knows the family contacts the East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office. On January 21st and 22nd, detectives interview all 4 men. They pull their phones. They review the videos. They cross-reference everything with the autopsy. On January 23rd, 8 days after Maddison's death, the case exploded into national headlines. Washington and Carter are charged with 3rd-degree sexual assault. Carver and Lee are charged as principals, accused of facilitating. Under Louisiana law, 3rd-degree rape covers situations where a victim is too impaired to consent. Maddison's .282 reading, the surveillance footage, and Carver's own words form the core of that case. At the bond hearing, a judge watches the car video in a darkened courtroom. Maddison slurring, men laughing. He sees the surveillance footage of her collapsing. He reads Carver's statement. When he speaks, he says something that will follow this case for years. The evidence to me is clear. He sets a combined bond of $275,000 with strict conditions, but within days, the men bond out and go home. The community is furious. The men who left Maddison on a dark road are sleeping in their own beds while she's in a grave. Investigators look at the bar too. Within days, the state's Alcohol and Tobacco Control Office suspends Reggie's liquor license, calling it a threat to public safety, citing a long history of undercover stings, violent incidents, and a pattern of ignoring the rules. In April 2023, Reggie's reached a settlement. Its license permanently revoked, its owner banned from ever holding another alcohol license in Louisiana. The bar is given the death penalty. Maddison's family calls it the least that can be done. But they also know closing a bar doesn't bring back a daughter. As months become a year, the case shifts from what happened that night to whether prosecutors can prove it. In 2025, local reporters obtained the DNA and autopsy reports, and buried inside is a detail the defense immediately seizes on. None of the 4 men's DNA is found inside Maddison. What seemed like a clear intoxication assault case becomes a legal minefield. The defense says this proves no assault occurred at all. Prosecutors counter. DNA is powerful, but not perfect. A moving car, clothing, and emergency medical intervention can all affect what the lab finds. Meanwhile, charges escalate. A grand jury upgrades Carter to 1st-degree rape, carrying mandatory life without parole. And he'll be tried as an adult. Carver picks up an additional charge, video voyeurism, for allegedly recording Maddison in that car. Defense attorneys also push to introduce Maddison's sexual history, claiming a prior encounter explains her injuries. Louisiana's rape shield laws are supposed to prevent exactly that. An appeals court agreed. The defense appealed all the way to the state Supreme Court, and in November 2025, the High Court shut them down. A victory for Maddison's family, but at the cost of yet another delay. Then, another twist. In late 2025, reporters uncovered text messages between Carver and his father, suggesting the judge assigned to his case was, in their words, really good for our case. Prosecutors filed to have her removed. In November 2025, Judge Gail Horn Ray was recused. A new judge, Fred Crafassi, is assigned. By January 2026, 3 years after Maddison's death, a tentative trial date was finally set. August of this year. 3.5 years. That's how long Maddison's parents have been waiting to sit in a courtroom and hear someone in a black robe say what the law thinks happened to their daughter. Maddison Brooks will never walk across an LSU graduation stage. She'll never work in a newsroom or wherever that manship degree might have taken her. She'll never take another spontaneous trip or post another picture from Tiger Stadium on game day. She was 19. Her obituary talks about her pure heart and love of adventure, and how even in death, she saved lives by donating her heart and kidneys. Somewhere out there right now, there are people alive because of Maddison. The 4 men from that car are all out on bond, living their lives while they wait for trial. Carter faces possible life without parole. Washington faces charges here and has had other accusations brought against him. Carver faces principal to assault and video voyeurism. Everett Lee's criminal involvement appears to have faded. Her father has filed a sweeping civil lawsuit, 24 defendants, the bar, its owners, the 4 men, the rideshare company, various insurers. His way of saying, all of you played a part in this. And then there's the bigger question this case forces us to sit with. When someone is that intoxicated, whose responsibility is it to keep them safe? The bar that kept serving a 19-year-old until she could barely stand? The friends who lost track of her in a crowded club? The 4 men who saw a drunk, vulnerable girl and chose to take her, film her, and leave her alone on a dark road in the rain? Or is it all of them? This case is still unfolding, but some things are already clear. A 19-year-old with a bright future is dead. A bar that should have known better is gone. And 3 years later, her family is still waiting for someone to say the word they've been holding on to since that night. Accountable. I'm really curious what you think. Do you believe what happened in that car was assault? Does the lack of DNA change your mind? What about the bar? Is closing Reggie's enough? Let me know in the comments. And please, keep Maddison's family in mind when you do. This isn't just a story to them, it's their life. If you found this important, consider subscribing. Until then, stay safe, take care of your friends, and if someone around you has had too much, don't look away.